In 2003, I met a young Indian American who came to California and said he wanted to run for office. And I immediately resonated with his philosophy, and I wrote him a check on the spot. And that was also because he was running on an anti-war platform. That was what really drew me to him. But then I found out what a fantastic person he was, and he tried again. And ladies and gentlemen, here's Ro Khanna.
Thank you, MR. I usually joke that they omit all your losses in introductions, but only back home do they remind you of that. But MR was a very, very first supporter. I'm very proud of that campaign. I got a whole 19%, and Tom Lantos got 70-something. But the reason I say that is, in retrospect, I realized I had no shot, but at the time I thought, wow, I'm really going to win. But MR and so many people like him believed in me, not in that campaign, but for the future. And I just want to thank him for his leadership and his belief in diaspora, and how many people here are present. What a remarkable achievement. Give yourselves a round of applause. I love the energy. I want to recognize and thank Neera for her exceptional leadership, a real role model for our community. And Varun, I don't know if Varun is still here. Gio Saba tells me you spent time at Stanford, a rising star, someone to watch. Rhodes Scholar. Is it okay to say Rhodes Scholar? I mean, I used to be a time where education was good in this country, but I still think that being educated is good. I was in Ohio, and I said to someone, yeah, 60% of folks don't have a college degree, and of course we need more manufacturing and construction jobs, but guess what? We also need more PhDs, because that's what's going to create modern manufacturing and construction jobs. And I have one of the things that concerns me as our party, as I've been looking at these polls, and we're losing on the economy, 15 points, 20 points. I don't understand it, really, but I think our party needs a clearer economic message, a sense of what I call a new economic patriotism. The challenge in our country has been, for 50 years, we made a strategic mistake. We said that production didn't matter, that we could win the Nobel Prizes in America, that we can go do the high-end jobs, and somehow the production could go offshore. And we basically watched as production went offshore. We didn't invent the automobile in this country, Germany did. We didn't invent the jet engine, a Britisher did, but we did the mass production. That's what made us an economic power. We actually invented the solar panel at Bell Labs. We invented the semiconductor chip, and we let the production leave. As a result, the net worth, the wealth of people who are middle class or working class in America has declined by a staggering 25% since 1980, 25%. And 50% don't believe in the American dream. 50% think that the American dream has been downsized, the very dream my parents came to America for, and that so many of you came here. Why do I talk about these themes at an In Diaspora conference? Because I don't think this is the time in our country to talk about things in a segmented way. I think we have to talk about how are we going to stitch this country back together. And that path starts by economics. And I saw this when I was with the president in Ohio at an Intel factory with the CHIPS Act that I helped co-lead with Senator Schumer and Todd Young and Mike Gallagher. And there at that Intel chips factory was a vice president, an Iranian American with a thick accent from Intel, and Pat Gelsinger. And the Iranian American there had an 8-year-old boy come up on stage. The 8-year-old boy was a 5th generation, probably Ohioan. And as we drove into Columbus, there were signs, Trump 2024. And this Iranian vice president comes up and he says to this boy, you too one day could be the CEO of Intel. And in the audience, fourth and fifth generation Ohioans are cheering for an Iranian immigrant with a thick accent at Intel. No speech that Barack Obama can give, no speech that the president can give is going to bring our country together in a way that bringing economic jobs to the heartland, to the Black South, to places left behind are going to do. We need to have a vision in this country of bringing new economic activity to places left out. We need to say that the past, well, one of the things the party needs to say is we made mistakes. In Galesburg, Illinois, which was in the President Obama's keynote speech, I went there 20 years later. People are saying our kids are still leaving. Why did you send our jobs offshore? I was campaigning for Fetterman. The taxi cab driver said, I'm never going to vote for you. You put my father's steel mill job, you sold it to China. We have to understand the anger around the country. The jobs didn't just hurt the white working class, they hurt the black working class. Bill Spriggs says that the deindustrialization hurt black Americans more than any of us. And we need a new generation then that says we're going to build the new steel, the new aluminum, the new graphite, the new chips, the new industries across America, not just clean tech, but every industry. You know what the last time this country had a trade surplus? 1975, 50 years of consistent offshoring of jobs without production. I believe our community can be part of that vision to create new jobs, new industry, a new economic opportunity across this country, and I look forward to working with many of you to do that. And as we do that, we build the bonds and the strengths between the Quos and the heartland, between the white working class, Asian community, Latino community, all together to grow our nation's economy. That has been a lot of my work. I know a lot of you in diaspora are engaged in it, and I look forward to seeing how we can continue to partner on that economic vision. With that, MR, do I have time? Are we going to have some questions? Or?
Absolutely,
All right,
Ro.
okay.
So, Ro, let me ask you the first question right here. So, you wrote the book, Dignity in the Digital Age, right? And that was a great book, and we had you on one of our events. And in diaspora now has this collective careers program where we want to help train people for IT jobs and IT-enabled jobs. Can you talk a little bit about that part of it?
Yeah, the first thing, in my view, is recognize that 85% of jobs in this country are private sector jobs. Like, most people do not want the job I have. Most people don't grow up saying, talk about jobs, we often talk about, well, government job. And you read Arlie Hochschild's book, Strangers in Their Own Land, and she'll tell you, you know, a lot of these places, people want private sector jobs. They used to have $30 jobs. They used to be part of their community. They used to have wages, and those jobs have left. How do we create those jobs? One, we need the private sector engaged and involved. I'm working with Google right now, 10 community colleges, land-grant HBCUs across America, where they actually are paying a $5,000 stipend for the young person. They are providing an 18-month curriculum for that individual, and at the end of it, they get a $65,000 job. The key to that is a partnership with the community college or land-grant institution and the private sector. And it will not work if the private sector is not engaged in the type of credentialing that we need. And so that, I think, is absolutely critical to building the workforce.
Questions for Ro? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, 1 second, please. Go ahead and repeat the question. Wait for the mic, please.
Yeah. What happens if Supreme Court says the current case, whenever it shows up, that the legislatures can overrule the final electorate?
Yeah, the electoral. Look, it's a concern, but I think the Electoral Vote Count Act, which the Senate, I believe, will pass in the lame duck, and that the House has already passed. Every state has a law on the books that says that you have to have the state currently vote for the popular vote winner in that state. That's the current law in all 50 states. and the Electoral Count Act reform, which would say that if a state changes that after the election, it would trigger judicial review. And I believe that that will be a significant step in safeguarding our democracy. But I'll tell you something, and I share a big concern, obviously, with what's going on in this country, the systematic assault on voting rights, on women's rights. But every time, you hear the Democrats on television, they'll tell you our democracies, we're doomed. And, when I go on an airplane, when there's turbulence, I want my pilot to tell me I'm going to get to the other side. I want our country, we elect people with confidence and hope. This country overcame slavery. This country overcame Jim Crow. This country defeated tyranny. This country defeated communism. John Lewis was beaten on the bridge of Edmund Pettus. Give me a break. We're going to overcome Trumpism. We're going to emerge as the first multiracial democracy. And we need more leaders speaking about the confidence and the vibrance of the democracy that's emerging, as opposed to not recognizing the extraordinary strengths of the nation.
Asha?
Ro, good to see you. I have a question about, so going forward, I do see some serious, engagement between US and India. There's so much optimism, it's coming out of our port right now. I see Nirmala Sitharaman, everybody is in the Washington, D.C., or, D.C. people are in India. There's a lot of excitement in that bilateral relationship right now. But my question to you is, how do you see any possibility of the shadow of the past, as the U.S. has had a relationship, strategic relationship with Pakistan from the past because of the Cold War, because of the Afghan War, and so on. Do you think that there would be, what do you see any difficulty in any of that past slowing down the buildup of trust from the Indian side for partnering with U.S. more deeply?
Obviously there is that historical legacy, but I don't think that that's the big challenge. I think the bigger challenge is how do we get the India-U.S. relationship to be stronger so that India is not as dependent on Russia on arms, and that they have more of the arms relationship with the United States. And how do we make sure that India is a strong ally of the United States? But I really don't think that India itself or the United States views India through the prism of Pakistan. And as India emerges as a power, it shouldn't always link itself to Pakistan. It'd be as if every time we spoke, people said, well, what about Canada? And our view is like, almost who cares? It's sort of we're the world power. I like Canada, don't get me wrong, but we matter. And so India matters, and they should judge the relationship on its merits and not always link it to Pakistan.
The Democratic Party used to be the flag bearer for the middle class. What it is planning to do to bring the white, angry middle class back into its fold?
Well, we've got to win the economic argument. We've got to recognize, I think, we have got to be clearer on going after, first of all, on cost of living, some of the big oil companies that have been making record profits, and saying we're going to have a windfall profits tax and put money back in people's pockets, and we're going to go after the price gouging of big corporations. We're going to go after corporate greed that sent so many people's jobs offshore. The reason the middle class and the working class are upset is because the middle class and the working class have lost out. It's not irrational for them to be upset. They have lost wealth since 1980. They have seen their jobs disappear. They've seen that happen on both parties. And the first thing the Democratic parties have to say is, we got the message. We're here for a change. And here's what we're going to do to build the new manufacturing jobs, to build the new production jobs, to make sure that we're going to prioritize the working class and to have a coherent, clear economic framework.
We'll take one more question, or two questions rapid, one after the other, and then you can take both of those.
Yeah, this is a quick follow-up on what you just said, because I have seen personally, being in the operations manufacturing arena for many years, is the execs will move jobs out of the US as soon as possible for the slimmest of margin gains. So how do you balance that? That is, you want unfettered capitalism, which in many cases means I'll do whatever I can for some shareholder value. because they couldn't care less about, say, their community. So how do you get, quote unquote, stakeholder value into the boardrooms where actually then the private sector can be, quote unquote, held accountable, or at least manage, getting more of the workplace and not offshoring at the fastest possible rate?
I think you say unfettered capitalism has not served this country's interests. Intel basically refused to invest in new semiconductor plants or research because they were busy on stock buybacks. Those used to be more or less illegal since before 1982. Make them illegal again in terms of the manipulation of stock buybacks. We need to make sure that if you're going to bankrupt a plant in Wisconsin and move offshore and leave people totally unemployed, fine, that may be a cost of doing business, that we're going to tax you. And if you're going to dump products into basically decimate industries, then you're going to face a carbon tax at the border. I do not trust the goodwill of executives to be patriotic, but I do trust policy to be patriotic. And you know what drives me crazy is when I was out there and I was talking about making things in America and building America, someone said, oh, I don't understand Khanna. That's a Donald Trump thing. I thought he was a Democrat. No, it's not a Donald Trump thing. It was an FDR thing. FDR built the industry of America and guess what? He won 4 terms in was remarkably popular. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. What did he do? He had financing of our industries. It was women, by the way, who built all the industries because the men were out fighting the wars. And he had government purchasing, and he had a policy that said we care about having industry here. And it is the government that needs to lead, not just wait for the whims of business. The government is still the most powerful institution in the history of humanity, and we can. And this president is doing it with the CHIPS Act. We're going to bring a lot of that semiconductor manufacturing back. Maybe one more question.
Yeah, one last question.
Yeah.
Well, I think I welcome the rise of the U.S. India relationship, but I believe in America, now maybe I'll end with this, I believe in America is an exceptional nation. And I'll tell you why I think it's an exceptional nation. It's an exceptional nation because my grandfather was spent 4 years in jail in Gandhi's independence movement, working with Lala Lajpat Rai. He was in jail from 41 to 46. My parents came here, and so many of you came here. Basically, we wanted the engineers post-Sputnik. The Soviets beat us to space with the satellite, and after 65, after the Immigration Reform Act, my parents came. Both because of Sputnik and because of the debt we owe to the civil rights movement. We would never have been here if it weren't for the civil rights movement that owes a debt, of course, to India's independence movement. I was born in Philadelphia in 1976. And at the age of 40, this country elected me to represent arguably one of the most innovative places ever in human history. That's an American story. We're going to become the first truly multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy in the history of the world. I believe that is an effort to I tell people, maybe people in this room may disagree with me, if I had happened to be born in India, the chances that I would have been able as a non-connected political person to get into Indian politics would have been far less. This is still the most open political process in the world. And so I believe that we will see a woman president, an LGBTQ president. We already have an Asian American, African American vice president, and this country is going to see an extraordinary moment, and you all will be part of it. And so the last point, when people say, young people, why should I get into politics? I say, give me a break. The challenges you face are so much less than the challenges previous generations faced. You're not going to have to go to jail for 15 years like my grandfather did. You're not going to have to get beaten on the Edmund Pettus Bridge like John Lewis. You're not going to have to die for this country in Normandy. Don't be so self-entitled. Get up, do your part to serve this country, and finish the relay and make this the greatest country in the world. Thank you.
Give Arun the last word.
Yeah, no, I think after such a wonderful statement, there's no time for a question. But I just share one quick story. when I was representing the United States government on a mission to Kenya, and Kenya is a very tribal country, and only the Kikuyus can become the president. So one of the ministers said, if a Luo, that's Barack Obama's tribe, if a Luo wants to be president, he better go to America. So that illustrates your story. But I just want to say in conclusion that I've watched you from the Tom Lantos campaign.
And your wonderful sons.
And we've been cheering
You
for
did a
you.
wonderful job at Commerce in your service.
Thank you. And I really like your contribution. I really like the fact that you're focused on the economic issues, which, as you mentioned, are really critical to America's progress, to the progress of liberal movements in the country. So thank you for all your service.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.
I think the room had so much energy before Ro came in, and now the energy's gone even further up. So thank you so much.
Thank you.